Today we are going to talk about the plant kingdom. As you can see that there are simple plants and the higher plants. They are the dicotyledons, monocotyledons, the flowering plants, the seed-bearing plants, the vascular plants, algae, fungi, ferns. They all fall under the plant kingdom. The early attempts of classification. Aristotle grouped plants into trees, shrubs and herbs based on their habitat. He divided animals into anima and anima on the basis of the presence and absence of RBCs respectively. Charaka listed various plants and animals in his book Charak Samhita. Coming to artificial system of classification. Theophrastus proposed the first system of artificial classification of plants on the basis of habit into herbs, shrubs and trees. Carolus Linnaeus proposed the artificial system of classification called as the sexual system of classification, which was based on the nature and the number of stamens and carpels. The classifications consisted of 24 classes, in which almost all classes were of flowering plants, the Phanerogamia, and only one class was the flowerless plant, that is the Cryptogamia. Phanerogamia, the flowering plants. They were described as such: monandria bearing one stamen, diandria 2 stamens, triandria 3 stamens, similarly enandria 9 stamens, decandria is 10 stamens. Then coming to icosandria 20 stamens, where filaments were attached to the calyx. Polyandria had 20 or more stamens and filaments were not attached to the calyx. Didynamia 2 long stamens and 2 short stamens. Tetradynamia 4 long stamens and 2 short stamens. Similarly, Diadelphia, the stamens were in 2 phalanges. Polyadelphia, the stamens in 3 or 4 phalanges. Syngenisia, union of stamens confined to the anthers. Gynandria, the male organs were attached to the females. Declinus, separate male and female flowers of the same species. Monaceae, the male and female flowers on the same plant. Dioecia, the male and the female flowers on different plants. Polygamia, wherein the male and female flowers mixed with the hermaphrodite flowers, the unisexual flowers sometimes on the same and sometimes on different plants. And lastly, the Cryptogamia, they were the plants without proper flowers. Now, the artificial system of classification had several drawbacks. The criteria used for classification are superficial and do not reflect the natural relationships. The system does not reflect the evolutionary relationship between the organisms. Many unrelated organisms are placed in the same group on the basis of their habitats, that is, their dwelling place. For example, whales and fishes had been put under the same group. Closely related organisms have been placed in different groups because of the differences in their habitat, feeding habits, etc. Since the system was based on few characters, diverse animals and plants were placed into limited number of groups. Coming to the natural system of classification, it was the horizontal system of classification or the 2D system. The organisms have been classified on the basis of their natural affinities. Many taxonomic characters were used to group the organisms. They were based on the morphological relationships. Some of the natural systems put forward by were A.L. de Jussieu considered the position of stamens with respect to ovary and the number of cotyledons. A.P. Candolle suggested the characteristics of vascular tissue was used in the classification of plants and recognized two groups, vasculaires, that is the vascular plants with cotyledons, and the cellulars, that is the plants with vascular bundles or cotyledons. George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooke classified plants into dicotyledons and monocotyledons. There were various merits of the natural system of classification. It established natural relationship amongst organisms. It placed only related organisms in a group. It brings out the phylogenetic relationships and indicates the possible origin of different taxa. The merits of the Bentham and Hooke system of classification were: they were practically useful and considered to be the most useful system in our country. In this system of classification, monocots have been considered to be more advanced as compared to ranels, which have been considered to be primitive. The demerits of the Bentham and Hooke system were that the gymnosperms were placed between dicots and monocots. Many important floral characters have been neglected. This does not take the phylogenetic system into consideration, believing in the fixity of species. There is a distinct discrimination. Some closely related families have been put under different cohorts, while unrelated families have been placed nearer. Advanced family like Orchidaceae have been considered as primitive. Coming to the plant kingdom, this is the Cryptogamia, that is the non-flowering plants, and Phanerogamia, the flowering plants. Under Cryptogamia we find Thallophytes, Bryophytes and Pteridophytes, and Phanerogamia have gymnosperms and angiosperms. Angiosperms further are divided into monocots and dicots, and Thallophytes have bacteria, algae, fungi and lichens.